Now let's turn our attention to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They're on a surprise humanitarian visit to Jordan.
A wax-sealed letter, a departed monarch's penmanship, 5 words on the exterior that brought an entire royal gathering to a standstill, to be unveiled when the time came. That was all it said, and for years it remained untouched inside the royal archives, secured beneath Kensington Protocol 14C, a classification so confidential that even high-ranking palace figures required special clearance to so much as utter its title. No one approached it, no one dared, until this moment. Because the instant that ivory-toned envelope was finally pried open, its deep crimson wax seal still intact, the Queen's private emblem still catching the light, everything shifted. Not solely for Meghan Markle, not solely for Prince Harry, but for the entire royal lineage, for every individual named along that line of succession, for every designation that has ever been contested, murmured in corridors, and wielded as a weapon in the years following Harry and Meghan's departure from the throne. Remain with me here, because what you are on the verge of hearing is not conjecture, it is not tabloid rumor. This is confirmed, substantiated, and in certain instances still developing. By the time this video concludes, you are going to grasp something that the conventional press has circled around but never truly addressed. This was never merely a domestic dispute. This was a battle for the monarchy's very essence, and the palace has just revealed its final move. Let us begin from the absolute origin, because to understand why Harry was left utterly stunned, you need to comprehend just how deeply rooted this narrative truly runs. The remark that ignited the powder keg. It unfolded at a private Hollywood public relations gathering in early January, the sort of occasion where the room is filled with media heavyweights, elite-level tacticians, and reputation architects who construct and dismantle public personas for a profession.
Meghan Markle was present, composed, self-assured, and apparently feeling unusually forthcoming. Then she said it. 12 words. Casually slipped into what should have been an innocuous exchange. 12 words that triggered an explosion that continues to reverberate to this day. Archie's got far more fire than George. He was destined for the limelight. Now, pause for just a moment. Ask yourself this, and this truly matters. If you were the mother of a child carrying no royal designation, no ceremonial role, and no official standing within one of the globe's most influential institutions, would you draw comparisons between your child and the future King of England inside a room packed with media professionals? Because Meghan did, and the room absorbed every word, and recordings began circulating before she had even stepped outside the venue. To most observers, it may have appeared like innocent maternal affection, but to those present in that room, individuals who comprehend public relations, who understand the monarchy, who grasp the razor-sharp boundary between championing a cause and issuing a provocation, it registered as something altogether different. One insider chose their words deliberately. They described it as a provocation concealed beneath vanity. And here is precisely what renders this particular moment so profoundly significant.
It was not simply the remark itself, it was the context in which it was delivered. Meghan did not make this comparison in a vacuum. She made it while actively constructing a brand, a storyline, and a campaign carefully engineered to reshape her children's connection to the royal institution. The observation about George was not a misstep, it was a message, and Buckingham Palace received it with absolute clarity. Their reaction arrived without a press briefing, without an official declaration, without a solitary publicly credited syllable. Instead, it manifested in the form of a digital elimination so precise, so calculated, and so rapid that royal observers characterized it as a thunderclap concealed within silence. The official royal family website, specifically the line of succession page, was discreetly amended. No forewarning, no clarification, no public notice whatsoever. And the names of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor vanished, entirely stripped from the 6th and 7th positions on the succession roster, erased completely as though they had never existed there at all. Now, here is the question you must genuinely wrestle with. Was this merely coincidence, a routine technical refresh, a standard administrative correction, or was this the palace deliberately drawing a boundary in the sand? Because what transpired afterward renders the answer painfully, irrefutably obvious. The documentation that rattled the palace. Now, to fully grasp the magnitude of what the palace was quietly piecing together behind sealed doors, we must venture further into the past, because the story that was on the verge of spilling into public view had foundations stretching years back, concealed beneath layers of institutional concealment, mutual understanding, and meticulously preserved confidentiality. In the middle of 2025, a startling disclosure to the Parliamentary Office for Constitutional Integrity brought forward classified documents that had been held under stringent government protection. Among them was a scanned registration form from the Santa Barbara Fertility Center, dated April 18, 2019, the very year of Archie's arrival. The particulars contained within that document struck investigators like an icy shock. The form identified a donor within the maternal origin section, accompanied by a notation reading "Donor site non-relative." Meghan Markle's name appeared on the document, but not in the position most individuals would have anticipated finding it. She was not recorded in the biological mother column. She was listed explicitly and without any ambiguity whatsoever as intended parent. Should those documents prove to be precisely what investigators assert they are, the constitutional ramifications extend far beyond any domestic controversy. Because under the Act of Settlement of 1701, one of the oldest and most foundational pieces of legislation governing the British monarchy, the regulations surrounding succession and royal legitimacy are exacting and have been consistently upheld for well over 3 centuries. But the Fertility Center paperwork was merely the starting point. Simultaneously, a separate governmental audit had uncovered a financial trail buried deep within the sovereign grant records. Public funding, resources allocated specifically for royal property upkeep, had been channeled through a Delaware-registered shell corporation operating under the designation Arch Genesis LLC. And when forensic accountants began mapping those transactions, the portrait that emerged was nothing short of extraordinary. Records documented $95,000 in surrogacy agency expenditures, $110,000 in legal facilitation charges, $195,000 in medical disbursements, and a further $82,000 entered into the ledgers as a live birth disbursement for candidate 6. Each and every one of those payments corresponded with pinpoint accuracy to the timeline surrounding Archie's birth, and the origin of those resources traced directly back to the Frogmore Cottage renovation budget. Taxpayer funding designated for the refurbishment of a royal residence, apparently redirected toward an entirely unrelated purpose. Reflect carefully upon what this genuinely signifies, because the implications are nothing short of enormous. This is no longer about a domestic dispute playing out through streaming platform productions and ghost-authored autobiographies. This is about public funding, about constitutional legislation, about documented monetary flows that investigators assert connect directly to fundamental questions surrounding the birth of a child once registered on the British royal line of succession. The palace was no longer contending with murmurs and speculation. It was confronting a scandal with a documented financial trail attached, and it responded with the composed, measured, and devastatingly precise methodology that centuries of institutional endurance had conditioned it to execute. the concealed provision and the arrangement that disintegrated. Here is something that virtually nobody has confronted head-on, but which rests at the absolute core of why Harry's circumstances became so impossibly untenable so rapidly. Because buried deep within the Sandringham negotiations, the departure discussions that culminated in Harry and Meghan formally withdrawing from their royal was reportedly a provision that neither party ever anticipated becoming public knowledge. Clause 7, paragraph 3. According to individuals with direct access to those deliberations, it stipulated that the sovereign would withhold investigation or examination into matters of ancestry and birth in exchange for the voluntary relinquishment of public responsibilities, designations, and official royal representation by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Absorb that slowly and allow its gravity to fully register. The palace consented to permanently shelve all questions surrounding Archie's origins. No investigations, no public examination, no formal proceedings whatsoever. And in return, Harry and Meghan would withdraw from royal life gracefully, surrendering their working royal standing, their entitlement to public resources, and their authority to formally represent the crown. It was, in the most straightforward conceivable terms, an arrangement of reciprocal protection. The palace safeguarded its constitutional integrity from a looming crisis. Harry and Meghan secured their departure without scrutiny or revelation. Both parties obtained what they required. Both parties consented to maintain absolute silence. And for a period, that silence remained intact. Then arrived the Oprah interview, a 90-minute prime-time transmission viewed by tens of millions globally, in which Meghan leveled allegations against the royal family that the palace categorically rejected and that ignited a controversy never fully extinguished. Then arrived the Netflix production, 6 installments of carefully curated personal footage and deliberate testimony portraying the Windsor household as frigid, unwelcoming, and fundamentally resistant to shielding a woman of color from institutional prejudice and a predatory press. Then arrived Spare, Harry's autobiography, distributed globally ahead of its publication date, containing characterizations of his father as emotionally detached, his brother as physically confrontational, and the institution of his birth as irreparably damaged. 3 violations, and whatever fragile remnants of the understanding forged at Sandringham had been reduced to cinders, because the arrangement, if it truly existed, was entirely contingent upon a certain caliber of silence observed by both parties. Her critics described it as long overdue constitutional clarity, but inside palace walls, according to those who were present, staff used a single word to describe what had just happened: closure. The brand, the backlash, and the book that crossed the line. You might expect that by this point, with legal amendments being drafted, financial audits uncovering paper trails, and names being removed from official succession lists, the warning signs would have been impossible to ignore. Any rational assessment of the situation would suggest that this was precisely the worst moment to push further. Meghan pushed further. California's state trademark filings are public record, and sharp-eyed royal observers who tracked them regularly noticed something new buried within the listings: a brand name, Royal Reclamation, registered under a holding company connected to RQL Enterprises. The product catalog attached to that trademark registration was remarkable in its audacity. Children's loungewear, printed family crests, glossy storybooks described internally as tales of lost birth rates, and perhaps the most deliberately provocative item on the list, a toddler t-shirt bearing the slogan, "Future Monarch, just not yours." Now, ask yourself this: who is that slogan directed at? Because the answer, when you consider everything we have just examined, is not unclear. A striking 3-minute teaser video surfaced on Meghan's Instagram. It opened with slow-motion footage of young Archie running through a sun-drenched California orchard, laughter filling the screen. Then came Meghan's voiceover, soft, measured, defiant. Every child deserves their full inheritance, their full story. The video cut abruptly to archival footage of Queen Elizabeth's coronation, the golden crown beneath cathedral light. The message was anything but subtle. It was a declaration, and inside Buckingham Palace, jaws clenched. But the item that shifted Princess Catherine from composed frustration to something considerably sharper was a children's picture book included in the Royal Reclamation Catalogue. It was titled The Little Lionheart.